Today we're going to build a modern platform bed out of plywood. A few weeks ago I made this bed that holds a projector and has metal legs. Now I know welding is a little bit beyond most people's capabilities, so I wanted to show a plywood alternative that uses conventional power tools. I'm going to start by ripping down a sheet of 3/4 inch thick plywood into strips. I'll put a link to dimension drawings in the description box below. I'm going to make all of my cuts with a circular saw. I use a speed square to guide the perpendicular cuts, and for the triangular ones, I just draw a line and then follow it. The legs for the bed are made by gluing multiple pieces of plywood together to add thickness. I experimented with both cutting out the pieces first and with gluing them together first and then cutting the triangular shapes. Both methods worked well, but if you don't have a great circular saw, I recommend cutting the pieces out individually and then gluing. My brushless circular saw, however, has no problem going through 3 layers of glued up plywood. One pair of the legs also supports the headboard. So for these, I cut the initial triangular pieces a little bit long. I then lined them up with the pieces that are going to go underneath the bed and then drew a line to reveal where I needed to trim the excess. I used my orbital sander and 100 grit sanding pads to smooth out all the edges and round over the corners just a little bit so they weren't too sharp. Whenever I'm doing a lot of sanding, I like to wear a dust mask to protect my lungs, and my favorite one is the RZ mask. It's super comfortable and it actually looks kind of cool too. I then glued and screwed these pieces together. 2x12s could be used instead of plywood, and that would save you the step of laminating the layers together, but 2x12s tend to be a little bit warped, and I like that when you laminate the plywood together, you get nice flat pieces. I'm going to paint these, and I didn't want the screw heads to show, so I just covered them with some wood putty. The other set of legs is also just glued and screwed together using 3 1/8 inch long finish screws. Now if the legs are assembled, I was ready to paint them. I just used typical interior house paint in a flat finish. The frame and headboard for the bed are going to be made out of 3/4 inch thick furniture grade plywood. I clamped down a straight edge and then used my circular saw to rip the pieces. I'll put dimension drawings for this project up on my website as soon as I get the chance. I used a speed square to guide my circular saw when I cut the pieces to length. The platform for the bed is going to be 2 layers of plywood thick, so I applied wood glue to the pieces and then clamped them together. The bottom piece is going to stick out about 3.5 inches past the top piece, so I used a scrap piece of wood to make sure that I could apply pressure with the clamps to this offset edge. After letting the glue cure on these first 2 pieces, I then laid out the entire platform and then cut the support pieces for the front and back. I glued these pieces together to make half-lap joints. If I wanted the platform to come apart easily, I would have just used screws. But since this platform isn't that big as it is, I decided just to glue it all together. Alright, frame for the platform is done. Time to start on the headboard. I glued in the edge supports for the headboard and then took field measurements so I could cut the top and bottom supports at just the right length. I want the headboard to be at an angle, so I set my circular saw to 30 degrees and then trimmed the edge. But then I realized I cut the wrong side, so I had to flip it over, reset my straight edge, and then cut it again. There we go, now that's the right angle. I then clamped down a straight edge and cut one of the edges of the platform at the same angle. Overall, my glue up was pretty clean, but there was a couple places where a few drops squeezed out, and I just used a chisel to scrape those away. I cleaned up the edges with some sandpaper, and I just gently rounded them over just a little bit. I then sealed the wood with 2 coats of Varathane water-based polyurethane in crystal clear matte. It was a little bit sloppier with the glue up on the headboard, so I used the orbital sander first with 100 grit pads before finishing with 150 grit. I then used the water-based polyurethane on this piece as well. I placed the frame up on sawhorses upside down and then screwed the legs to the frame. I started with 3 1/8 inch long finish screws and then added in some L brackets to add additional strength. This can be a little bit tricky because you have to make sure you don't screw so far so that the sharp end of the screws don't protrude from the plywood frame. We then flip the frame over and we're now able to screw through the top of the platform and into the legs. We placed the headboard and then screwed that on as well. We cut some 6-inch wide slats out of 3/4 inch thick plywood and then screwed those into place. We're using a queen size mattress from Tuft & Needle, which is the sponsor for this video. These are incredibly high quality mattresses that come in a nice convenient roll that's shipped right to your doorstep. All I had to do was pull it out of the box, unwrap the protective plastic, and I was ready for the most comfortable mattress experience I've ever had. Seriously, the best mattress I've ever tried, and you can find out more by clicking on the link in the description box below. Now the platform of the bed was bending just a little bit too much, so I took a couple of 2x6s and painted them before screwing them to the underside of the platform just inside of the legs. Not only does Tuft & Needle make the best quality mattresses, they also sell really fantastic linen bedding. If you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I'm really not into patterns or graphics that tend to get outdated really quickly. But classic, minimal, solid color home goods that have a fantastic texture are exactly what I'm looking for when I'm picking out bedding. We got the linen bedding in both white and charcoal gray, and it feels great to the touch and looks super modern and really classic. For additional info on Tuft & Needle, click on the link in the description box below. We are partnering with Tuft & Needle not just to do this design, but we want to provide a whole bunch of different DIY bed options. So if you have some ideas or some particular needs, be sure to let us know in the description box below. If you want to see what we're working on next, be sure to follow us on Instagram. Check out some of our other videos, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks. Bye.